Call to order this August 20th, 2019 meeting of the Planning and Economic Development Committee. Thank you all for coming. And
Mr. Chair, as a point of order, I'd like to appoint for this meeting Mr. Adam Chapman as the secretary to keep minutes. I'll make that motion.
I have a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Davis. First on our agenda today, we have the approval of minutes for the June 4th, 2019 meeting.
So move.
Is that motion to approve? Okay. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, next up, I don't have an agenda because usually there's an agenda here. Thanks, John. And the agenda was on the screen. And you just love this screen. Thank you.
It's a work in progress, Mr.
Yeah.
We gotta get there.
All right.
Are they working?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you switch that, it switches here. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. We have an update regarding our current development statistics for Oconee County, also from our Mr. Chapman. So that'll be interesting.
Thank you all very much. I compiled some development statistics for the county from January 1st of this year through August 15th. August 15th was chosen because that was the day I did it. There's no particular happenstance because of it. So first thing is residential. Over the last couple of years, we averaged 30 to 40 new home permits issued each month. This year, we're at 29.83, so we're pretty much on track. We issued 238 new homes, that's stick-built permits, 98 manufactured home setup permits, 82 remodels, 54 garages, and 51 residential additions. The remodels, garages, and additions speak to people putting value into their homes, and just generally speaking, that's a good sign when people are just investing in the properties they already have. From a commercial aspect, we pulled 22 new commercial construction permits with a valuation of over $145 million, and 21 remodels coming in at just over $20 million. So we do have a good commercial investment here over this year so far. One thing, we don't have any sort of, from the planning perspective, we don't have sort of RV statistics that we keep, but I can look at it from the back end, looking at electrical setups. So there's been over 100 plus RV permits pulled, essentially. And then for major upcoming projects, there's significant additional student housing interest along the 123 corridor. A group came in and bought a large chunk of the undeveloped Cliffs community and has begun subdividing portions of that off. Only 8 lots so far, but I mean, if they wanted to pull the trigger, they could divide off at least 100 more lots from Old Chapman Bridge down to Kiwitown Road down that stretch. So there's definitely development happening. Also along Davis Creek and Old Clemson Highway 123, there's Bojangles going in where the Roadrunner used to be there on the south side of the road. There's luxury storage units going in. The gun range will be online before Christmas, I believe, and there's just more development being actuated in that area. Also, 9 named subdivisions we have coming in for 50 new homes. Most of those are none of those are lakefront subdivisions. Those are all in this between Walhalla, Seneca, and Westminster area. Basically everywhere the Walhalla water touches. So this has just been a brief update as far as development goes in the county.
Is that 50 homes each?
Total, sorry.
Okay. Gotcha.
That's what I have for that.
Is that the end of the
Yes, sir.
report?
That's
Okay.
all I
All right, thank you. Does anybody have any questions regarding the report from Mr. Chapman?
No, I appreciate you compiling the report. I think it's good to see Oconee County continuing to grow, especially on the industrial side, 145 million. There's been reports there's not a lot going on in Oconee County, and I think from what you just showed right there, we're continuing to a great pace, but a controlled pace at that, and I think that's a good thing. So I appreciate all of those. I know our building codes have been busy on there. I know, and I think this is a good time to bring up. I've had a lot of our Lakeside Lodge has talked about how wonderful the inspection process has been. From the planning department to the building codes department and everything like that. So I speak very highly of what y'all are continuing to accomplish to keep them on track. Project Epic spoke very highly of what we tried to do everything we can to keep their, hammers and drills and everything else going. So I appreciate that, and especially with all the students and stuff moving in on the Project Epic. I know a lot of people worked overtime and did everything besides work on Sunday, and I appreciate Ms. Brock and her team and all that they're doing to continue with that. So, Mr. Elliott?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo that and just say that I think it's a sign of, even with the economy kind of faltering, I think it's a sign that Oconee County is strong and getting stronger. So thank you for this, all the statistics.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Next up, we have a survey establishing baseline information regarding the Utica community. Also, Mr. Chapman.
So we were tasked with coming up with a way to look at the Utica community, the 399 addresses that are the Utica community. And this is a qualitative look at the area just from a driving down the road. This doesn't look at emergency services or any other kinds of statistics. This is simply a drive-through of what anyone would see, and we just kind of compile this into a meta view. And we're looking for trying to identify some strengths and opportunities and establish some baseline conditions to say what we see today, what we see tomorrow. So the survey design was such where when it's vacant, it would be purple, red would be uninhabitable, blue is excellent, good, fair, and poor. Now, Lisa Simmering with our GIS department and mapping, she created an app with software we already have, and she did in-house, and it's a very good application for the phone. And we just took out iPads and the assessor's office, Kevin Robinson and his team went out and did the physical looking at every address, take a picture of every address in the Utica community. So, I mean, this wouldn't have been possible without a full team effort. I must say though, this isn't scientific research, this is merely a window study, as it were. So we have some representative survey results where this would be an excellent rating there. This would be a good rating there. This would be fair. This would be poor. There's a tree happening to be growing out of the house. And uninhabitable. The best map I can provide you, this is a density map, a heat map as it were, where the darker the colors here is the accumulation of uninhabitable and generally speaking poor housing stock. And it's just another way to review the survey results. So when we went through, we looked at, does it have broken windows? Does it have broken doors? How's the roof line look? How does the yard have things in it that, generally speaking, aren't found in yards? Vehicles untagged, things of that nature. So we're looking at that as a way to drive through. So this map is certainly helpful. All right, there we go. So this is the breakdown of it by number. So between the blue, which is the best, and the green, which is second best, that comprises 85% of the housing stock, and it's not that bad. It just kind of looks like the eyesores or what people may consider blight is very congregated, and it's very visible because the community is very visible. There's not a tree line in front of it. There's not any number of acres in front of it. You can see issues because you're right there next to it. It's a very walkable community. Whether you want to walk there or not is up to you, but it's a walkable community because it's shaped to be set up for the mill community. So generally speaking, the housing stock is okay. It could, of course, anything could be improved, and the hot spots on this heat map definitely point us in areas that could be improved, and it's a very good shot of it. Also, this is just in the county. It's not part of we didn't look at the city of Seneca's portion of it. But if you put this on the map, none of this would surprise you when you look at it. Like, yeah, that's pretty obvious what it is. The portion that's in the city of Seneca we haven't approached. This is just the 399 addresses that are comprised of Utica as far as we see. And that's what I have for you.
All right, thank you. That this is excellent. I appreciate our GIS staff and our administrator, planning staff working to do what I've never heard of of an
It's
app like
incredible.
this. So this
It's
is
really
like,
incredible.
y'all
We're
invented
looking at
something.
sharing some of the data and expanding the application fields for public service, public safety, whether there's a special needs person in the event that we have an evacuation. We can use the application in all sorts of scenarios. Primarily, the reason, of course, for us creating this application was for us to develop the criteria for how to address some of the issues that we've experienced in Utica. And I know that you and I have spoken, but just on the record, this is the first step in the tool cabinet that we have in order for us to address some of the most severely dilapidated properties. We do have some options on some other things to do. I've also spoken with the Oconee Community Theater in the past about potentially giving us some land for the designation of a sheriff's substation, since it's outside of that strictly residential area. It's not something we would be able to man 24/7 right now, but having the presence there might be really good for us, and it could be something that we could institute in next year's budget going forward.
Awesome. Well, I mean, we see that it's not just people saying it, there's 10% of the
Yes,
structures in Utica are uninhabitable, which I think
Yes.
it's a relatively small area. I don't know what the actual, it's maybe a square or 2 miles,
maybe
that.
a mile and a half square,
mile and a
yeah.
half square,
Yeah.
so.
And I'd
40
be happy for
40 of the
y'all to
structures.
come to my office to use the map, and it's interactive, a lot more interactive than what we're putting here. But we didn't want to have advertised to the public that you could just click on a property.
Right.
That's something we'd like to keep in-house for now. Even though it's public record, you wouldn't be able to find all the information in one location. And I feel like in an effort to provide the confidentiality and security to those homes and the people living there, we should probably keep it in-house for a while.
Well, thank y'all for your work on this, and
Most certainly, there'll be more to come following this app and how we use it as an application to do improvements in that community.
awesome.
I do want to compliment Mr. Kane. I remember when he was running for office, Utica was a big high-ticket item that he was trying to do something, and, from started what was trash pickup to now, an app to see what we can do to change Utica. And I think, I've got a question the other day, why is Utica so important to all of council? And there's a lot of wonderful people that live in the Utica area. And I think those are the people that have reached out to myself, and I know Mr. Kane knows a lot of them as well. And other council members have gotten to meet them just to say, we want to help, we want to do something. And, I think having this number shows that the percentage of actual homes that we're trying to work with, that people maybe don't even own. Some of the people, some of the addresses I pulled up, they're not even around here. They probably don't even know, could be in a state that somebody passed away and nobody owns it, or, they do own it and don't even know that they own it. But the crime, when you look at that, this little 10% of uninhabitable, the crime that's around those areas affects all of us.
Yes.
It affects from all parts of the county. Those little 10% of homes is a result of about 80%, from what I've seen, the actual calls associated with what we're having in Utica. So I appreciate a council member continuing saying, we got to do something, we got to do something. And I think that speaks volumes to you as staff, listening to what we're trying to do and actually coming up with a very cost-effective idea with what this is. And this is a lot of in-house work. And like you said, y'all are inventors, and y'all have already done some action work, and I think that's great. And we're doing our best. We're working with homeowners, we're working with landowners, and, we constantly hear we're trying to take over. We're trying to take over people's property rights. That's not the case. We're trying to protect people's property rights, and I think that's the most important part about this project. So, and it's costing us millions of dollars a year in people's things getting stolen, the police force that we have to have out there, and just the domestic crime that we seem to happen with people that don't even live at that specific residence. So,
Yeah.
thank you for
Well,
that. I
thanks
think you
for,
should be proud of that, and
well, I'm proud of our staff and proud of the council for recognizing how bad it is. 10% of the rooftops in this small community are uninhabitable, and a large percentage of law enforcement resources are devoted to that small area. So we're paying for it right now,
Yes,
maybe
but
we
in a
can prevent
reactive
some of
way.
it by
Exactly.
focusing on improving some of those
Exactly.
areas.
And just one more kudos to staff. I don't have anybody here from the road department, I don't think, but I did send the road department out to help work on a community walking path about a month ago. So was some folks from Kentucky, I believe, came to do a service project here in the Utica area. We had
Yeah,
an
they came on a
access
missions trip to Utica.
from Kentucky. Yeah,
From
I
Kentucky.
forgot how many came. I think it was 38 or so that did
Yeah.
come. They were super impressed with the fact that the government stepped in, because they in Kentucky had never heard of the government stepping in to help. And just like you said, we weren't there to take anybody's rights or to stomp on anybody's rights, but to preserve the rights of the people that live there and to make the community a little better in however means we could. We did get the access and use agreement, and the guys worked for 2 days. 2 days worth of work meant so much to the people in that community, especially to Mr. Peter at the church. And it was just incredible to see their thanks and appreciation for such a small gesture. So I'd really like to say thanks to the road department on the record.
Absolutely. Thank you to the road department. Any other, and we look forward to seeing further developments, how this tool can be used in other areas of the county.
Well, this was sort of our pilot
Yeah.
program, because the information gathering and obtaining the data was easier for our staff because it was in such a small area. This application can be expanded eventually countywide. It's nothing that we would be able to complete within a couple of years, but every time we take a step in another direction, starting with our highest density areas, just for the simplest reason of data collection. Our tax assessor staff has been wonderful in assisting, going out and taking the photographs and collecting data with us. We've all worked sort of as a team. Okay, where are we? How's this happening? I'm really, really happy to see this data collection phase completed so that we can move on to problem solving in the future.
Well, it's very innovative, and, that's exciting that it's happening here in Oconee County. So thank you all for doing it with very limited resources, too. I know that this was not a line item in the budget of
It was not,
developing
but
software.
it's incredible what can happen when you get the right people in the right place at the right time.
Well, thank y'all. Anything else? All right, we'll move on to our economic development update with Ms. Hartman.
You can stand right in the middle. You don't have to go behind the podium anymore.
Yes, because we do have the ceiling microphone.
You can pace the floor.
That's right, it's
you
a
can do-
traveling microphone. Well, thank you and good evening, gentlemen. I always appreciate the opportunity to give an economic development update to this group, and tonight's going to be a little bit different in how I present what I am going to talk about. Really? Okay. So I want to talk about product development. As you know, we have the 3 industrial parks, and there's different types of activity happening at each one of those. And what you see in front of you tonight, that is a dated photo, I will tell you, of the Hamilton Career Center. If you've been by Highway 11, they already are working on the structure vertically and have the second story already going up. So lots of activity happening out at OITP along with Horton in their construction and moving forward with their development. So what I'm going to give you is a little bit of an overview, and then I have a drone video I want to show that highlights each of the parks and talk to you about how we are using that to market each of these properties individually. This is also a shot of the OITP, Oconee Industry and Technology Park, and I show you this drawing as a reminder. A number of years back, we went to plans to get a second entrance into that park, which would then pretty much circle the Workforce Development Campus. So what you see there in the dark, the lower side of that is Highway 11, that's the access point. So the second entrance into that park was to go to the campus side of the industrial park, and the dark kind of U-shape was going to be the additional road that was going to be built. As that project continued, it was determined, because it was coming off of the Highway 11 entrance, that DOT would administer this project. We had some initial construction estimates of this road. If you remember, I think in 2017 were those estimates, late 16, early 17. As DOT got involved, some of those numbers started to change. So long story short, DOT is still administering
For the worse. Not
For the worst,
better.
yes. So our estimate was here, DOT's was here, we kind of came to here, and then if you remember a while back, we went back to the ARC and got additional funding to meet what the DOT's estimate was. So we have full funding for what DOT estimated this portion of Road A would be to get into that park. Just last week, they bid the project. The bids came in closer to our number, not DOT's number. So unfortunately, we maybe have lost 11 months of our lives and construction time. But the good story is that road entrance is going to be built. DOT has bid that project. I don't believe they've let it or awarded the bid because they got to go through other paperwork and such. So hopefully we will start seeing that construction. So that whole site's going to have a lot of work going on in the next 20 months. The top part of that U-shape that you see, we're calling Road B. And that is going to be, that's not the Road B identified on here, but the very top portion. That's actually going to be built by, our road department is administering that project, but we're having a private contractor build it. And that was monies that came to us from Blue Ridge Electric from the utility tax credits. So all of that road should be completed in the next, as I say, our portion will be done by the end of the year. And then DOT is DOT. So we'll get back to you on that. But happy to just report that those projects are moving forward and continued emphasis on that.
Thank you.
Can I touch base on that while you're back, if you'll click back
Back
over there,
one more.
Adam? And I think there was some concern on the road, the ingress and egress of those roads. From my understanding, on speaking with people coming in and out of Tri-County Tech and officials there, they felt both of those roads have been very safe. The one coming into Tri-County Tech, I know the one coming off 11 is not, but they have felt both of those, the corrections that we made to those has made those very safe and passable coming in, turning left and coming out.
Yes.
And I know we did some changes on there, a little bit more than what DOT had stated, so I think that speaks volumes to what y'all are trying to do, that it is safe for
Right.
our students as well, because as we go in, when they open up the Career Center, the traffic's gonna just about triple with Horton coming in there as well.
And continuing to market that park, we need it, that's the whole reason for the second entrance, so there could be flow of traffic, and both entrances will be built to the standards that heavy-duty trucks can go in and out, or passenger vehicles or whatever. So we're not limiting the lower entrance to just the campus, because there's also property still to be developed on the left side of that. So we'll continue to do that, but it's going to be built to the standard that DOT
And Road A
requires.
will not have an island in it. I know y'all took that, it never
Yes.
has had an island in it.
No.
Just so we're clear, there's no island in Road A.
There is no island, no.
All right.
Trucks
Good
can
to
get in and out, they won't be driving over concrete and destroying our island, so yeah.
Thank you.
This is the Seneca Rail Park, just an update for you. That's the entrance road that we've talked about. Jay Davis was awarded that contract a while back. We finally have final approval from Norfolk Southern, so if it's not DOT, it's Norfolk Southern or someone else. Norfolk Southern's given the final notice to proceed. Jay Davis started construction out there with mobilizing equipment and the demolishing of parts of it to then build it back up. So that will be, that project also will be completed by the end of the year. So a lot of things are coming to a close at the end of 2019, which is great. And then again, just to repeat, the $500,000 RIA grant that we have for Seneca Rail Site, and that is for the water and sewer infrastructure. We're partnering with Seneca on that, as Seneca is the water provider out there. They have worked with the engineering firm to put the plan together, and also have already received a permit from Norfolk Southern. How they get theirs quicker than us, I don't know. But they've received the permit to bore under the railroad to get the water infrastructure in, and they've already received that permit. So once we're ready to move forward on that project, we have pretty much a green light from Norfolk Southern. So that's also a plus. I do not have a time frame on that project yet, because we haven't fully designed it at this point. So this is a nice color photo of the Oconee Industry and Technology Park. Again, some of this is a little bit dated because there's a lot of activity happening out there. But what we have put together is site at OITP, and it hadn't been mowed completely. We did get a path mowed through so that we could take the client out through the property, but we were able to provide a drone video so he could really see how did this site really compare to the rest of the park and give him a real good relative feel as to where he was standing and how far the property went back and what the topo looked like. So we really appreciate having the opportunity, one, to get the footage, and then our graphic designer, Morgan, does a great job piecing these together and putting them on formats that we can share with different site selectors, the state, the region, and then individual projects. So as I speak about the three parks, just a little bit of information. Since April, I just wanted to throw some stats relative to how many times, so we get RFIs, requests for information, on a fairly regular basis. Some months are greater than others. But since April, we have submitted, of course, Oconee Industry and Technology Park seems to be our most popular, and the Workforce Development Campus really drives that. In addition to the fact that we've done the grading, we have the entrances already built so that it's product that's ready to go. So we have submitted the Oconee Industry and Technology Park 7 times since April to different site selectors through the state or through the regional alliance. The Seneca Rail Park we've submitted twice. Now, Seneca Rail is very unique. You got to need rail or else you really don't have a reason to go there because it's not the most accessible otherwise. But we do have 2 projects that have looked at that. Still have one that's seems to be very interested. As soon as that road really starts developing, I think that will push him further to making his decision one way or the other. And then at the Golden Corner Commerce Park, we've submitted that project 4 times, and most recently just in the last couple of weeks. So that park, as you know, we've kind of put it on hold with another project looking at purchasing it, but we haven't stopped selling that park. And again, having the drone video helps us to give a real good picture of what that park looks like, where it's located, and that type of thing. So just wanted you to know we're continuing to market those and continue to send those out to various site selectors and interested parties.
Can you repeat those Golden Corner statistics one more time that you're continuing to market? How many times have you sent that out?
Since April, we have submitted Golden Corner for 4 projects.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Can I go back to my, yeah. So I just have a couple other things. Any other questions relative to the industrial parks? So a lot of product development and things like that happening, but if you don't have the product, we have a number of RFIs that come in, they're looking for a very specific product, and if you don't have the product, you don't get a chance. So at least with the industrial parks that we have, we do get a chance. So, and then we also have a couple of buildings that are privately held that we help to market as well, and we send those out occasionally too. But tonight I wanted to focus mainly on the county-owned properties.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Speaking on the Horton property, I was out there the other day and they're doing a lot of grading. Was there any, I mean, obviously any kind of project comes in, they've got to do some grading and some changes. Was there anything that they stated that, you know, the product they felt like was 80% ready to go for them, which is what they were excited about? Was there anything that they specifically thought that maybe we could have done? Or, you know, there's always been, we've talked about spec buildings and site ready and things like that. What have you noticed with the market out there, that why they chose this site? Obviously, they're still doing grading, but what, as council, can we learn from Horton coming in and still having to do some grading, which we obviously know they're going to?
Right.
So we know how far we should prep a site for an industry.
That does make a good point, because a couple of things for Horton, it was graded fairly well. It's very accessible because it's right at the top of the intersection. Truly, the biggest selling point for Horton was the Workforce Development Campus, and they stated that in many conversations. So as far as property goes, depending on where they're going to place their building, what they need in their building, how many drive-in docks they need or loading docks, those kinds of things, that's where your grading is going to vary. But Ms. Brock and I have already spoke about, we're going to start running out of readily available property in the industrial park on Highway 11. So we may have to start looking at the pieces we didn't grade and talking about what do we need to do, get them a little bit closer. We have the 50,000 square foot pad, which really you can't see on this picture, it's down this way. but it's only for 50,000 square foot, and that's somewhat, so Horton couldn't take that because it's too small. So it's almost too small, so we've looked at what do we need to do to increase maybe that pad-ready site, to make it larger. And then from a spec building standpoint, Horton wouldn't have wanted a spec building because they have a specialized operation. So they would have wanted to build their own anyway. And what I've heard in the state, if you're looking at doing a spec building, it really, 50,000 square feet, spec building is going to be too small. You're going to go between 80 and 100 for it to be marketable. But a lot of companies right now, if they're looking at a building, they have some very specific needs. So that's just something we have to think about.
Is there a reason those needs have gotten a lot more specific? Is it the equipment that they're bringing in that's so specific? Because, I mean, obviously, we went from, 33 feet is what they were staying. As long as it was 33 feet, it was good, but I've looked at a lot of spec builds across, not just in South Carolina, but North Carolina and Georgia, and the changes that the industry is requiring the county to make. I mean, I'm not so sure it makes it any quicker to have the spec building there. And so that's been interesting because 2-3 years ago, it was spec building, and now
It's kind of taking a shift.
we've got counties where they have spec buildings and the industry's coming in there and taking this beside it. And,
Yeah.
you know, the county's going, well, we're glad you're here, but why won't you take, you know,
Right.
we want to get rid of this building.
It's just
So
a shift.
It's a total shift and change, which is interesting that we have to, because, you know, this is the taxpayers' money that we're sitting up here going through to really think about, because a spec building is extremely expensive. And I know we've talked about it, and we had a project going, and because of the interest of somebody in that park, it came off. So I'm just trying to pay attention to what everything is
Right.
going
You
on,
gotta-
not just in our state, but other states. So last thing we want to do is make a 2 or 3 year mistake of,
Right. And I think you just got to look at the time, when is it right, and then determine what's been the feedback from site selectors, what's been coming in on RFIs, to kind of know what is the interest now. I mean, up and down 85, you're seeing all sorts of warehouse going up. So things are shifting, and it'll shift again. So just kind of watching the market and being involved in all of those state and local and regional meetings and hearing the feedback and visiting with site consultants, and that's what we do. So we'll keep our ear to it and just see what happens.
thank you.
I want to thank Ms. Hartman for this drone video, because I mean, I feel like between Mr. Chapman's presentation and yours, we're now high tech. And
And you have computer screens, yes.
and our new,
We were flying.
thank you.
Yes, thank you. You are, it's great to have the opportunity to use it and use it for our benefit, so that's good.
We need 3D up here. Like, we need to put the goggles on and like,
You can just do it from home. We'll do virtual meetings from
there
home.
you go.
Just a quick segue here. I talked about, I think the last meeting, I talked about our talent attraction program that we were going to kick off called Surge. And I just wanted to give an update. Morgan Holcomb, again, is leading this charge in our office. Emily, here with us tonight, is a member of this group. But we started this Young Professionals program back in April with a mixer and trying to get young professionals integrated with our investors and with our industry leaders. That group, and there's a group shot of the last event we had, which was a professional speaking Toastmasters level event, and they had a lot of fun, but also learned some things with it. But the biggest point here is to mention that our membership list, right now, we have an email list of members, and that is topping 65 members right now. The word has gotten out, and again, we opened it up outside of Oconee County for a reason, to have that regionalism. And at this meeting we just had, I think there were 5 or 6 from Clemson University that they work at Clemson University, because our age group is above the college age limit. But the great thing is we're starting to network outside of our area and bringing those ideas and those people together. So I commend the staff for that. I'm just kind of their advisor, obviously. So, but good things happening with our talent attraction young professionals group.
We need Emily to bring that to council so we can have that much fun at a council meeting. So
Next time.
appreciate what you're doing. I've heard a lot of good things about the meeting.
Lots of things happening.
Yeah.
And then lastly, I want to talk about opportunity zones and just give you an update there. If you remember, County has two different opportunity zones, and you've heard a lot about one of them tonight, and that's in the Utica area. And the other one is in Newry, which is a little bit larger. So opportunity zones have been kind of a hot topic, and then we're waiting for regulations to come together, but we're starting to now see interest from investors in opportunity funds to start putting money to work in these different communities. So we have met recently with a couple of folks that are looking at projects in each of these areas, and then also looking at what can the county do from our standpoint to help move this process forward. And hearing all the great things already happening in the Utica area with our planning department, it's kind of a nice opportunity for us to now look at potentially bringing in a consultant to give us an economic impact study to tell us feasibility, what would work in each of these communities. So right now, the state of South Carolina is offering a grant for the counties to apply for, which would allow us to utilize those funds to pay an outside vendor to come in and do an economic impact study, a feasibility as you would, as to what could we look at in those different areas that would be feasible, that we then would have a proposal or prospectus that we could take out to opportunity funds that would want to fund these projects to help move those forward. So what I'm proposing and what I'd like consent from this committee and all of council is for the county to submit an RFP out for a vendor to come in to do an economic impact study. There are groups out there that do these. They can range from $20,000, $30,000, $50,000, depending on the level of study that you do and to the degree. What I'd suggest, because these opportunity zones are so close, is that we do it in a radius that would encapture the majority of it and do the impact study there. And what would happen is if we get this RFP out and we get a proposal back, we can submit that proposal to the state, and that grant is worth $25,000. So it could pay for a portion of the feasibility study that we need to have done. So I'd like to move that forward because I think we're at a point where we need to start putting some thought together as to what's really going to be feasible in these areas for us as a county to have some impact.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make that motion to refer to council to submit the RFPs as was stated.
Second. Any discussion?
Real quick on that, I think it's to see the interest in these two areas right now is very wonderful for there. Me and John are jealous because Paul got opportunity zones in just his district.
Well, no, John got it.
I know, he gets a little bit
that
of
one.
Yeah, but no, we
Glenn's got some too.
So,
Sorry, Glenn.
Yeah, I got left out, but no, I think the interest in those two areas, and I think from the statewide, I think you need to, thank all the way up to, Tim Scott and Lindsey Graham, to all of what they're doing on the opportunity zone as well. I know, I've been to a lot of meetings about trying to learn what in the world opportunity zone is, and I know Mr. Kane is kind of our knowledge workhorse on that as well, and Mr. Elliott's been to a few as well. So I think that's a good thing, and for what the state's trying to put out there and they're learning as well. It's a work in progress and the investors that are seeing what they can and can't do. But that's exciting for those two areas that are in desperate need of development.
Well, and to that point, I think the timing, as Ms. Hartman suggested, there are projects looking and seeing where the market's going right now. People probably want to bank their gains out of the market, and they have to deploy that money pretty quickly in order to benefit from the opportunity zone. So they take the gain and then roll it into an opportunity zone, and it's defer the payment of taxes, and also can enjoy a step up in basis if they keep it in there long enough. But I think the timing is perfect to get this, hopefully get the grant funding.
So the grant funding from the state, that application is due October 1st, so we would want to move on the RFP very quickly.
Yeah. And regardless of whether the state awards us a grant, which I hope they do, we need to have this study done in order to attract additional investment into these opportunity zones because the timing is very important. And right now is when we need to be attracting this investment. So it'll just give us another mechanism to market these properties and show investors that there are needs and how maybe take away some of the work they have to do as there's
Justify the project.
thousands of opportunity zones across the country. And so, make sure that we make it easy for them to say yes to Oconee County.
Right.
Is there any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
Anything else, Ms. Hartman?
No, that's it.
And I just want to publicly thank Ms. Hartman for, I'm sure everyone in the room knows that Janet will be leaving, headed to California. Not many people moved from South Carolina to California. Most of them moved from California to South Carolina. But, her husband got a great opportunity out there. And we just really appreciate all you've done for Oconee County, working for Destination Oconee, and then as director of the Economic Alliance. So thank you for that. And also thank you for staying on, because I don't know what we would have done if you didn't stay on, to help us select our next economic development director. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. That's it.
All right. That concludes the discussion portion. Do we have any unfinished business this evening? Do we have any new business?
Yes, I've got several things I'd like to say. Speaking of Destination Oconee County, our architecture was defined as, I believe it was rustic Appalachian architecture for the suggested architecture of commercial buildings in Oconee County. I think I'd like to ask Mr. Chapman and Ms. Brock to look at our selected corridors and come up with the definition or the standards for that type of architecture, and also investigate the cost, additional cost to a contractor for complying to that standard, and in relation to a new ordinance that I'd like proposed after that work of requiring that architecture for commercial buildings on those selected corridors.
Is that a motion to direct it, or do we need a motion as a directive?
That's a motion to direct staff to research potential ordinance and the costs to developers or contractors for complying therewith.
Second.
That's correct.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Allen.
Is that, David, are you
And
okay?
including within that motion would be the definition, and I think you said rustic, you said Appalachian. Rustic elegance was the term that's been battered
Yes,
around.
excuse me,
So I got here, so
yes.
there's been work done on trying to pin that down, so I'm gonna make sure we
Okay, yes.
pick up on
Yes.
where that work is. And there was a couple projects within Hartwell Village that was employed. That's a good example of where we tried to employ that concept by material selections. Some would say it hit the mark of somewhat rustic elegance, some would say it's nothing near rustic elegance. It was a pilot program, but it's certainly an additional cost, I think, to the developer would probably say so, but we
And
do
this
have
would be just for the facades.
Right.
Right. I don't know about,
And more than just the ground floor.
yes.
I think our current
With the-
standard is ground floor only, is
Yeah,
that
Yeah,
correct?
this would be the facade, whatever,
Yeah.
any sort of facade, yes.
All right,
Understood.
any other questions or discussion on that motion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
I'd also like to talk
Yes.
about signs also on those selected corridors. Now, I'm not talking about billboards, I'm talking about signs for the commercial buildings. That we look at a standard maximum height, width, and also distance from the road. I think due to safety concerns, we should look at that and then possibly go from there and write an ordinance requiring that on our selected corridors for commercial buildings.
And that's a motion to explore, what's the motion, on sign
Sign.
size?
Signage and distance from the road
Okay. On selected corridors?
in the selected corridors.
Okay. Is that, David, do you need any clarification on that?
I do. So just to make sure we're clear, 123 obviously is one that, and Planning Commission is working on it from a previous motion here, and it's got a lot of momentum getting up to it, but some folks will say that ship has sailed to a certain degree there. But when you're talking about other commercial corridors, do you feel like you have a definition of that?
If I may, at the last plan income development, I came to you with a list of all the major thoroughfares into the county. Is would that be what you're referencing, sir?
Yes, 123, I believe it was 130, Julian, which one's?
28.
They're identified in the
128,
They're
minutes.
listed.
183, oh, excuse me, 188,
176, 130.
Mr. Chairman,
188.
The
Mr.
selected
Pierce- Mr.
corridor,
Pierce,
is that the
can
ones
you-
that were identified in the?
will you
minutes?
speak when y'all are talking about the signs on the corridors from a directive of Planning Commission is looking for more directive from Planning and Economic Development and Council. When y'all have talked about signs, can you speak about what y'all feel like there should be a little bit more directive from council on specific sign, like a sign height, so it's not a battle on the planning side of things? Yes, sir. Come over here, Frank. Or you don't have to come all the way over, just right there is good enough, because just step forward just a little bit.
I think what everybody is wanting is to find out exactly where council is, and we don't wanna overstep the boundaries and tell people they can't have but just 10 by 10 signs. We wanna make them adequate, but we need to get council's input on what they are seeing that is out in the communities and in the business areas. Because if we make them too big, they're eyesores. If we make them too small, then everybody complains about we're not giving them enough surface to advertise their business. So that is the main directive I think we need from council and from this committee.
Thank you.
Mr. Elliott, you had your planning commission member, did you want him to speak on that, or did you?
Yes, Mike Smith.
Thank you.
Keep coming up.
I made a presentation to the planning commission before I became a member. And I took photographs of several signs in 4-lane wide roads, etc. And I showed them that the height and how you could see it, and I had the photographs. And it is surprising how a monument sign 6 or 7 feet high can be seen well across a 5-lane road and well before you get to it. So we really need to take a real close look at these signs, the height and the size of them. If you go through Clemson and you go to the subdivision or the shopping center that has the Publix in it, it has a very small sign, but most of the signs now about buildings are on the outside of them. So when you put up these large signage, it really, for the driver, it's just not really helping them in any way. You go down Hartwell Village, and what you see on the side of these buildings indicates, well, okay, there's PetSmart, there's such and such. I'm not looking at that Hartwell Village sign that's sticking up there high. So we can really look at these very hard, and we know now that people look at their Google map on their phone now to do all of their navigating, if you will. So signage may be something of the past, and we need to take a real hard look at the size of them and the height of them, because you'd be surprised that it really can add a lot to the community if we don't see so many of these that are up in the air and almost becoming a hazard to aviation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. All
I
right.
think he brings up a unique point, and, everybody's using the mapping system, and I've seen a lot of counties actually working to make sure that their businesses are added properly onto the system, that the address or whatever, if I try to pull up, a business, that it comes up properly, or if I pull up, Hartwell Village, it shows what's exactly in that stuff, or Applewood. any of those centers. So I think, to me, it seems like, we all, if you own a business, you get 28 calls about your Google listing has expired or whatever it is, or something's wrong with your, but I think that's one of the things that we ought to kind of look at as well is, that with the addresses and the signs that we're putting up, I notice the signs on the building more than I notice a pillar sign, very similar to what you're speaking of. And you also notice that what the actual what the business is doing in different ways rather than the sign. So I think that's a good thing to kind of look at. So we had a motion. Do we have a second on it? To discuss and talk about signs. I would like that to kind of talk about and look at what other counties are doing to add that to the motion on what they're doing for that location, because since we're living by the phones, are other counties doing anything specific, or are they just allowing the internet world to continue doing that?
So we've got a motion regarding signs, and I'll have to defer to Mr. Root on that.
If I may ask. He's got us muted for 1 second.
I've got another, before we ask for an amendment, I would also say, a lot of the landscaping, when you're pulling out of a commercial driveway, if it is very tall and it's in the right of way beside the road, it can be difficult to see. And we've got a lot of curb cuts on our highways already, especially I think about 123. If there's a hedge that is 4 feet tall and 6 feet off of the road, I don't know whether or not that's against code right now, but I would say as part of this, we need to think about any landscaping that's going to be close to the road and high. That's dangerous. You need to be able to see, you need some decent line of sight.
Visibility window, language or something.
And I don't know what the planning term is, but
Right,
from a
but like some
safety
plants are more
standpoint,
dense than others.
It's supposed to
Had
apply
a
to
tree
the
with no
setback, though.
limbs on the bottom, you know what I mean? If you planted a taller tree taller than your visual field,
right.
so we just may want a window of visual
That's a good
clearance.
point, yeah. And I don't know what that typically is, but we need to make sure that our code takes care of that as well while we're talking about it. That's just my input on your motion.
No, I agree, yes.
Okay.
Can I recognize Jim Cogner? No.
I mean, I think we're just talking with planning.
Planning commission.
Commission members.
Okay.
Now, I just have one did we have a second before I ask my question? I'm sorry.
Well, I'll add what Mr. Kane was saying into my amendment on what the setback would be for shrubbery and permanent style and temporary signage at that. Because I've seen the flip signs put in the right of way, it's just as dangerous as the shrubbery as well. So, just for the safety and specific to an area where a flip sign is obviously in there, it's one of the hot wreck, unfortunately, items in there. And I've gotten that complaint from, customers on the insurance side of things because, they stated they couldn't see around it. Unfortunately, that's not a reason to, have a wreck, but if there's something that we can do on that, so, is that amendment clear to Mr. Chapman and Mr. Root?
I do have one question here too. In the original portion of the motion, Mr. Elliott, you had mentioned in the select corridors. I'm going to go on a limb here and assume that those select corridors are the corridors that we had selected in the last Planning and Economic
That's correct.
Development Committee
That is
meeting.
correct.
And just for the record, I'm going to read those out loud and would like for you to verbally agree to those. It would be Highway 123 from the Clemson entrance on the eastern shore of our county, exit 1 at I-85, Highway 76 coming into Long Creek, and Highway 130 coming in from the north. Those are the select corridors that we look for review. Why are you shaking your head? Did I mess up? Sorry. I just want to make sure I wasn't causing.
Can we add Highway 28 and Highway 188?
188 is not a corridor. It's a road. 188 is an internal county road. Now, it's a state road, obviously, but it doesn't lead to anywhere.
How about 28?
28 does, it crosses a barrier, so 28 can be added. And if you want to look at an interior road, we can do that, but those development standards may be different if we're applying them strictly to corridors.
Okay.
So we're adding 28. Okay, perfect.
And 123, you said from Clemson to Georgia? Or to, is there a certain
That was
segment?
specific, well, from the minutes from the last meeting, it was 123 at the Clemson side. It did not go all the way through.
So it goes to where?
I mean, the developing
To Seneca?
standards would be developing corridor standards, so, I mean, we wouldn't necessarily have to list all the roads. Once we develop the standards, then we apply
Sure.
them to the select corridors. But I think, first of all, this would take us some considerable time, and I know it would take the planning commission some considerable time, especially with the leg of doing research with the counties. So we can identify corridors later if we want to get that list back out and then prioritize them. Or if you wanted to add 28 and 123 on the Westminster side, on the western side of the county, we can absolutely add that to the motion too. Either one would be fine.
Yeah, well, if that's okay with you, John? Okay. I mean, it's your motion, so, all right.
I took your motion recently.
So if I could then, at this point in time, so we get procedurally straight, I guess kind of linear from the last meeting and this meeting, if we could recast the motion, because I don't think this meeting was necessarily to send it to the planning commission to work with the planning director, but it was for us to look into the rustic elegance parameters, definition, as applied costs, as well as the signage, as well as the shrubbery setbacks and things of that ilk. If we could line that up with the motion that was made last time to recast it, that the planning director would work with the planning commission to investigate the business corridors on Highway 123 from the Clemson entrance to Georgia, 185 at exit 1, Highway 76, Highway 130, and Highway 28. And in that investigation, to include the topics we discussed today, which were the rustic elegance parameters and statistics, as well as the signage for business signage, not billboards, and setbacks for shrubbery and items of that same ilk, I guess. So if someone could make that motion, adopt that as a recasted motion.
I make the motion as stated.
Second.
Any discussion on that motion?
Would that be coming back to your committee, Mr. Kane, in the following meeting? That would be, is it in October?
Yeah, from this committee, you go to planning director, planning commission, then come back here procedurally, yes.
That would be on November the 19th. The next Planning and Economic Development Committee meeting is November 19th.
Okay, thank you.
We can reschedule another one prior to them, but I have a feeling it might take some time to collect that sort of data.
Any other questions or discussion? And just to state on the record, we really do appreciate the work the Planning Commission is doing and has done, and we're sorry for making y'all what may seem to be reinvestigate certain things we've talked about in the past. But thank you very much for your work. We do value it greatly. Hearing no more discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, do we have any other new business? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Stand adjourned.